Welcome to another Telltale Books video. I'm Greg, and I'm moving on with my Isaac Asimov series in this video. Another one coming from the early Asimov, and it is a sequel to a story that he had written earlier called Half-Breed. And this story is titled Half-Breeds on Venus. The story has an interesting beginning history. It was published in Astonishing Stories, the magazine that Frederick Pohl was editing, in the December 1940 issue. And it received the cover. It was the cover story. Full cover, full color illustration on the front of it. Unfortunately, I can't get a hold of a copy of that issue. I tried, but I can't find one. Not at any price on the internet. So I don't have a copy of that Astonishing Stories to show you, except to get it digitally and put it in here, which I will do. And it's going to be at the beginning of the video, I think. So I read it in my copy of the early Asimov, which I read it way back in like 1978 in a paperback copy of the early Asimov that I had. And so this is Asimov's 10th published story now. And like I say, it's the follow-up to the story Half-Breed, which was published earlier in 1940, in February 1940 in Astonishing Stories. And in here, Asimov always liked to do introductions in his short story collections and give you some background about how it was written, or whatever other anecdotes he had. And with Half-Breeds on Venus, he was in Frederick Pohl's office, and Frederick Pohl said he wanted Asimov to write a sequel to Half-Breed, because Half-Breed got a really good readership response. So Asimov did. He went back, he wrote this. Asimov says that it's a novelette, but he said this, when you do the word count, this was his longest story to date that he had written and published. So he wrote the story. It got published in December 1940 issue of Astonishing Stories. What is it about? Now, of course, the half-breeds are these human beings, but they're different. I believe they're human Martian or something like that. And they get treated like everybody who's a little bit different. They get treated like crap. And they have some superior mental powers, some superior intellectual powers. And they decide to just get together and all leave the Earth. They get a rocket, they take off, and they head for Venus. And so then in this story, they land on Venus and they get out. Venus seems to be a nice world. They meet these amphibious creatures on Venus that turn out to be intelligent. They're semi-telepathic, meaning they can communicate through thought communication, but you have to hold their hand in order to get the picture. And so the humans, the half-breeds, right away, the half-breeds are called tweenies. They right away learn to communicate and become friends with these Venusians, these Venusian amphibians. Well, then it turns out they're Earthmen on the planet, and they start looking to farm in the valley where the tweenies landed. The tweenies want to get rid of them. Okay, so I'm going to stop at that because I'll be in spoiler territory to go any further with this story. I thought Half-Breed was an excellent story, not quite a top tale, but it was an excellent story because it deals with the issues that we are still struggling with in our society, of trying to accept people who are different from us. And instead, what we end up doing is mistrusting them and treating them like crap and discriminating against them. And they get all the crap jobs and they get called names and they have to live in the bad neighborhoods. And I mean, we just can't figure it out that they're human beings like the rest of us and we should just accept them. And what Asimov is doing in Half-Breed is posing this situation where they aren't human. They're actually more than human. They're better than human. And now look at the fireworks fly. And so that's what made Half-Breed a really good story. But Half-Breeds on Venus is just, okay, go to Venus. The Earthmen arrive there too. But Asimov does not, which I feel he should have done. He should have taken this story and used it to craft a speculative solution where people can learn to get along and live together. But he doesn't go down that road at all. He just goes down the road of more hatred and fighting, which is probably realistic, but it's not what I wanted from the story. And then Asimov makes a very big part of this story a romance between two of the tweenies. And boy, is that just awkward. Okay, and Asimov admits in his introductory material to the story that how poorly that worked out in this story is why he tried to avoid romantic situations in the rest of his stories, because he just did not do a good job at all with that. It's just so, I mean, I can't even call it amateurish. It's not even that good. The only part of this story I liked were the amphibious Venusians. They were interesting. That was an interesting creature, potentially interesting culture, except then Asimov doesn't get very deep into it. I wish he would have done a lot more with the Venusians. This could have been a longer story. It could have gone into more detail about the Venusian culture and their intelligence and what they've done and history and stuff like that. And it also could have gotten into a whole thing where ultimately the three groups would come together and be able to live on Venus. That's the story I would have written. That's the story I was looking for. That's not the story I got. What I got was a very awkward romance, very poorly written romance, and just more hatred between peoples who are different. So, sorry I have to say this, but I do not recommend this story. I feel this is largely a failure on Asimov's part. The first time I have to say this, that I'm looking at the story and thinking, no, it just shouldn't have been written. It shouldn't have been published. If I had to judge Isaac Asimov based on this one story, I'd be saying, how did this guy ever get into print? It's that cringeworthy. You know, and Asimov is one of my very, very favorite authors from the very beginning of reading science fiction, so it pains me to have to say that, but Half-Breeds on Venus is just not a good story. Have you read Half-Breeds on Venus? Leave your comments about that or Isaac Asimov, and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Come on back. I'm going to have more good Isaac Asimov. The next story in line is one called History, which, at least so far, will also be from the early Asimov. I don't have the magazine for that one either. And come on back and watch them. That and a lot of other authors, I'm going to be here doing them.